Thank you for choosing this presentation. My name is John Blake and I work at the University of Aizu. Today I'm going to talk about improving an online course, systematic incremental innovation. This presentation is divided into 6 parts. I'll begin with introducing the concept of innovation first, then describe my context and the specific course I'm going to refer to. I'll then move to innovation and divide that into idea generation, idea evaluation, and idea implementation. And then I'll finish with the conclusion, which will bring everything together. So when we think about innovation, basically we're talking about changes, and some changes lead to good results, which is an improvement, and some changes don't, which will be an impairment. So I want to focus on the improvements. There are 2 main types of innovation. One is radical innovation, which essentially is making one big change. And the other is incremental innovation, which is making just a slight change. So how do we actually do it? Well, there are 2 main methods of innovation. One is serendipitous. It just happens by chance. You come across it, you don't really think about it. And that's nice when it happens. I don't want to talk about that today. I want to focus on the planned innovation. So this is when you decide to improve things, you make a plan on how to do it, and then you implement that plan. So I'm going to talk about the systematic innovation. My focus is on the small improvements. So this presentation is all about systematic incremental innovation. So let's think how we make this systematic incremental innovation. Essentially, you're just making this 1%, this tiny improvement. And what's the result of making this tiny improvement? Well, if you improve your course materials by 1%, would anybody notice? Probably not. But what if you made your 1% improvement each class and every class for a whole year? Would anybody notice? Sure. I mean, that's a substantial increase. Not only do you have 1% improvement on each class, and if you teach many classes or many courses, that would be even more, but you get the 1% increase on the 1% itself. It's compounded. So yeah, this is how you make a big difference by making lots and lots of small changes. So let me move over to my context and the course itself. I'm based in Japan, in the northern part of Japan, at a small niche university, and it's very snowy here, as you can see from the pictures. In fact, the bottom picture there is actually a hedge, although it looks like an ice monster. The course itself is language focused and content focused. So I teach applied logic and natural language processing, looking at patterns through English. So the students have to acquire both the content and English at the same time. The class size is quite large, 50 students. The learners are all majors of computer science. 90% of them are Japanese nationals and 90% are male. Everybody has a smartphone and there's free access throughout the university to Wi-Fi. So that's my situation. So to make any innovation, you actually have to have an idea. So idea generation is a key part. There are 2 main sources for ideas, from the teacher and from the student. I guess you can have from peers as well, but in this case, I didn't use my peers. From the teacher, there were 2 things that I did. First, was pre-class. I looked at the materials before using them to see how they could be improved. And then post-class, I reflected on the materials themselves. Now this reflection was often through the students, the messages that they sent me, the questions that they asked me, the problems that they had, because these emails, messages and problems showed me the weaknesses in the materials from my point of view. From students, I also systematically receive feedback from them, and I receive feedback in many different ways. Sometimes it was audio feedback, sometimes video feedback, sometimes written feedback, sometimes a ranking exercise, sometimes an improve this material exercise, sometimes simply asking what was difficult, what was easy, what was useful, what should be changed, how can I do it better. Doing these lots of different ways, I think, helped get real feedback from the students, which is what you really need to be able to make decisions on how to act. So once you've generated the ideas, you have to evaluate which ones to implement or not. And one way to do this is to think about the effect on students. Does it drive satisfaction? Is it good for learning? Or does it drive dissatisfaction? Or does it stop something driving dissatisfaction? So for here, this is a value analysis where, providing you know what your students want, and this means getting to know the students, you can identify dissatisfaction drivers, things that have no effect, or satisfaction drivers. So for example here, dissatisfaction drivers could be forcing students to download applications and install them, teaching things unrelated to the assessments, and giving delayed feedback on things that they want to get quick feedback on. Sometimes it's no effect. It could be that your interaction, the content and the homework actually have no effect, although that would be surprising, but again, every group of students is different. So knowing what students value and don't value is really important. So this is a related point. Once you know it's valued by the students, you have to decide which things to implement. And basically, you're going to perform a cost-benefit analysis. You're going to identify what's the time and financial cost and what's the potential benefit to the students. Anything that's a low cost and a high benefit is worth implementing immediately. Anything with a low benefit, and especially with a high cost, is probably not worth implementing at all. And between those ends of the line, you have low cost, medium cost, high cost, high benefit, etc. So this gives you a list of weighted priorities on which things to implement. For me, I implemented all the low cost options immediately, started to implement the medium cost ones, starting with a high benefit and moving down to the medium benefit. Anything that was high cost I delayed, and anything that was low benefit I decided not to do. Okay, here is the idea implementation, actually carrying it out. So first of all, you have the plan part where you've actually found something that's worth changing. Then you do it. Carrying out a quick change is fine and much better to make it better now than not do anything. Then you evaluate the success of it and you check it. If it's not as successful as you expect, then you need to act again and take any action necessary to make the change better. So essentially what we're doing is we're following the Deming cycle, the plan, do, check, act cycle. So this was one of the first changes I made to the website that I developed for the course. And it was moving from a light theme to a dark theme. And this was because students were accessing the course late evening, not 10 p.m. like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And because of that, it made much more sense for them to work on a dark background. When they do the programming, they always use a dark theme. So I made it easier for their eyes and easier for them to hopefully sleep after studying to transition to this dark theme. The early version of the course was PDF files that were uploaded to a learning management system, and they basically contained textual explanations of different concepts. And students found it hard. They could put them in Google Translate to get the Japanese approximate meaning, but they still found it difficult. After the innovation stage, I moved over to have not only text but also audio and video explanations. Just because of the volume of the explanations, there are teacher-made ones, but also student-made ones. Getting students to explain to other students is a great way. They can teach to learn. They have a real audience for what they're making, and also they're experts, in my case, experts in Japanese, so they can make Japanese versions and English versions. and I upload the best versions to the LMS and put versions on the website if the students are happy to share it. Another problem from working on the LMS was there were so many links to external sites. So students would log into the password protected LMS and then find a link which would take them to an external website. The link may break, may not break. There were lots of problems. Afterwards, it's a much more user-friendly way with the audio and video links embedded directly in the website. So if the video doesn't actually work, you can see when the page loads that the video doesn't load, and that gives me it's much easier for me to check whether the video is still live or not. If the link's broken, I can take down the video very easily. The audio files are stored on my server, so that's not an issue. But basically it becomes a lot more user-friendly, and the students don't have to move away to different websites. Once you take a student away from your course website, there's no guarantee that they'll be coming back. In a typical class, I'll normally start off by introducing the aims, and I'll close the class by reviewing whether we've achieved those aims or not. Now, thanks to the pandemic, I wasn't able to do that as well, but what I've done is to build these directly into the materials. So each unit kicks off with outcomes, which lists what the students are expected to be able to do by the end of the unit. And each unit has a review section where the students check that they can do something. If you look at the example here, there's a frog to symbolize the review part. And there it says, make sure you can explain the following 16 concepts in simple English. And those 16 concepts are listed exactly. The concept count, well, this stemmed out of the desire to provide explanations, because if you know how many concepts you have, then you know how many explanations are necessary. Previously, the students had to access lectures on the LMS and listen to the whole lecture or scroll through the whole lecture to find out which part that they need to listen to understand a particular concept. By counting the concepts, it made it easier for me to work out which concepts are introduced in which unit and to have a running count of those. So you can see from the example here, 68 concepts have been covered so far, and there's a total of 108 concepts. So the student knows there are 40 more concepts to learn by the end of the course. This one is kind of a continuation from the concept count. Once you know how many concepts there are, in my case 108, then you can list them. If you can list the concepts, you can organize them in a way that makes it easy to learn. You can group them in ways that make it easy to learn, but also easy to test. So I've got a master list for each of my courses. Of course, 180 only applies to this particular course. And I've created activities related to this list to help them review. So at the end of the course, there's a review unit where all the concepts are listed, and many of them are compared together to enable students to see the differences between the different concepts. The students have given very positive feedback on this master list because they have like a roadmap of where they're going. They know exactly what they need to learn, and they can systematically go through it. So I guess this brings me to the conclusion. I'm a little bit biased because I've used the marginal gains approach before. I've used it in my sporting life, I've used it in my personal life and my professional life when I was more in the business area. And this is the application of marginal gains or systematic incremental improvement to course materials. Well, what's it done? The most important thing for me probably, and this is very biased, is it's renewed my enthusiasm. It was much more fun to teach a course that was getting better and better each time. I think I'd got into a rut where I was teaching the same things, using the same materials with the same jokes, and this it made it more fun to teach. Because it was more fun to teach, probably I taught a little bit better, and probably, and I hope I have no statistics to prove this, probably the students learned better as well. In terms of the students, definitely there was a lot of student motivation. They could see that the suggestions they were making were being acted on. Their views made a difference. When they made the suggestions about whatever it was implemented. If it was a low-cost approach, I implemented it quickly, and the students could see that when they accessed the materials. So they could see that their contribution made a difference. I could see that I was making a difference, and it was really worthwhile. It was a very positive experience. So what about you? What effect could making this 1% improvement on each class have on your courses and your course materials? Okay, thank you for sticking this far through. If you have any questions, comments or suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to email me, the address is there, or if you want to ask me a question directly, go ahead. Thank you.